Thank you, Pat. And I'm assuming, and Pat, let me know if otherwise you can hear me and that you can see my PowerPoint up there. If not, let me know. So hello, everybody. I was going to say good morning, but it's good afternoon. And I'm going to be talking about staying out of court. I can't help you with staying out of jail. That's a whole other topic, but hopefully staying out of court. And I'm brought to you by, well, we've already heard from Jeff and Liz about Guaranteed, and then also First American. Melody's going to give a quick hello in just a few minutes. A lot of you probably know or have heard Gov Hutchison with SBAOR. He is the Pope or the grand guru of this topic. And when there's not a pandemic, I'm sometimes invited to share the stage with him up in Northern California for a large event, usually in December. I'll share with you some of the disclosure strategies I've shared with the audience the last time I was with Gov. And the way that we're going to do this, if there are any questions, is I think you put them in the chat room, and I am supposed to be done completely by 12:55. So I'll talk fast, but I'll be able to look at your questions. And if it's a complex question, I can contact you after the presentation on the phone, by email, whatever. If it's relatively brief and simple, I'll answer it here before the time is up, but I'll be looking at that chat room occasionally. Big topic. I hope you never get sued, but if you ever do get sued, there's an overwhelming chance it's going to be about this topic. Property condition disclosure, red flag disclosure issues are by far the #1 source of litigation against residential agents in California. There is nothing that comes close. No other state has this issue or this problem, but we do here in California. So it's a hot topic. So let me just start with a few comments about the visual inspection. And I will assume that everybody here, when you do your limited agents inspection, are using the AVID form. Not everybody does. It's not a statutory form. TDS is, or the tedious form, if you want to call it that, is. But I will assume everybody's using it because overwhelmingly most agents in the state do. But our marching orders on how to fill out the AVID come from the TDS, and it says we do a visual inspection. So a question that might arise from that is, does that mean that the only things that you would be disclosing are things that you can actually look at and see? Because it does say visual. The answer is actually no. And that's because even though I think the TDS has been out since, I think it was 1986 or something like that, been out a long time. And that wording, some wording has changed, but this you see on the screen, visual inspection has not. But in the court system, it's kind of morphed, if you will, to include or include any sensory perception. So it doesn't make any difference when you're doing your limited visual inspection on the agent's level at a property, whether you can see something that might concern the buyers. It's whether you notice it in any way you notice it. Keep in mind that the only buyers that sue are buyers that are caught off guard when it comes to disclosure. I like to put it this way: a house can be in miserable condition and falling apart and no litigation to come, as long as the buyers clearly know in advance it's in miserable condition and it's falling apart. They just have to know about it. So 2 examples of disclosures that would not be visual. Let's say it's a 2-story home. You're there, you've got your AVID. Even with the pandemic thing still lingering on, you're probably going to be there by yourself. You're upstairs, you're up and down the hallway with your AVID. And whenever I mention the AVID, I'll just say, whether it's a hard copy form, or it's on your phone or whatever, I won't go through that every time. I'll just kind of go with the form. But anyway, you got the form with you, or your laptop or whatever. And as you traverse the hallway going into the bedrooms and bathrooms, and you're looking for cracks or stains or whatever to disclose, you notice that the hallway seems to be a little bit off kilter, just not a lot, just a little bit. And you're done upstairs, you're ready to go downstairs. Before you do, you look down that hallway and you think, I really can't see any unevenness. I can't pick it up visually. But you have noticed it, and you've noticed it several times. So it's a sensory perception. So you would proceed to disclose it. Some agents hold back because they say, no, it says visual, I can't see it. No, that doesn't make a difference. It's really a sensory thing. So I don't know, upstairs hallway floor appears to have some unevenness or something like that. That'd be fine. The other example, you go to the property, again, probably you're on your own, you open the front door and there's a very strong odor in the home. Maybe you know that the sellers have three St. Bernards living in the house or something, and it smells like dogs, or they got 10 cats. Or let's say you're in the back of the house where the family room is, and you pick up a very distinct, like mildew odor. It's very pervasive, and you're thinking whether it's from the pets or from this, and you've got the buyers, let's say, it is so pervasive that even when the sellers move out and they clear out the house, this is going to linger on. It's probably going to bother my clients. Would you disclose it? You can't see it, but it's a sensory perception, you know, sense of smell in this example. And using the second instance I gave, the family room where it's kind of a mildew, you don't want to mention mildew because that's like kind of like the word musty, and mildew and musty are very much like the word mold. And one of the great things about disclosure, and there are not a lot of great things about it, but one good thing is, or great thing, is that we never have to figure anything out. We only point things out. And we do not want to use the word mold or anything like it, because in the court world, it can be assumed that we're projecting ourselves to the client as a mold expert. So you would want to disclose it, but you wouldn't mention mold or mildew or pets or whatever. So the question does arise, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to disclose? There's a lot of things I shouldn't, you know. I'm not going to write down, you know, this house stinks or something like that. You can't do that. Well, some words that I like are like obvious odor noted, apparent odor noted at property. You're calling attention to it, which is what the buyers, whichever side you're on, deserve to know in advance, but you're not setting yourself up for like a litigation issue. So any sensory perception doesn't make any difference which one. And on that Avid form, obviously besides the address and the date and all that, whatever entries you make on the from room to room, each one of them needs to be either a defect or a red flag, nothing other than that. And you probably know that, but I'll throw out a couple of challenges for you. First, by way of definition, a defect is, this is the easier of the two, and they're both easy. Like to my left here, where I'm doing the seminar, their class, there's a window. So if this was a property and it's cracked, my entire disclosure is just going to be broken window, cracked window, period. Nothing about the Frisbee that hit it or the baseball or the neighborhood kids throwing rocks. There's never a cause. You don't have to worry, even if you know, and you never really know, you just heard. But anyway, you just mentioned what you observed. Not big crack, not small crack, it's just a cracked window. So we're really making it easy, and that's the best way to go. Then the red flag category, which is not hard, but a little bit more to it. Like you see the picture, you're at a property and you look up at the ceiling and you see a stain. You're thinking, a lot of us would think, well, what happened, and did whatever the source is, was it fixed? Well, you never need to know any of that because it has nothing to do with disclosure. That gets into causation and current status and all that, and that's got nothing to do with the Avid. So let's say the picture that you see here, the stain was smaller. So a lot of us in the business would write down small water stain noted, but we don't want to say small. No adjectives in disclosure. Just as a side point, the way I like to say it is adjectives are the friend of advertising, like a flyer, whether it's virtual or paper or whatever. Amazing, beautiful, magnificent, scenic, marvelous, whatever. All day long, virtually no litigation in advertising. There's some, but not too much. In disclosure, no adjectives. Big, small, major, minor, fair, poor, long, short, never in disclosure. Just don't use them. There's no upside to them. So rather than small water stain, I might go, I got to drop small, and I got to drop water. Stains can occur from a lot of things other than water. And even if you're thinking, well, I've got the listing, I've been friends with the sellers for 25 years, I know what happened here. I know it was a roof leak. And the reality is in court, you do not know. You've only heard a story. And the story may be true, but you don't know. So don't take the liability. Don't express something that's going to get you in trouble. So for something maybe a little smaller than this, I'd probably just say, staying noted, discoloration, period. That's it. Now, if the buyers now know that that's there, if they want to investigate it, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But I've done my job in disclosure. So there's a lot of challenges. For time's sake. You're more than a half hour away from ending. I'll just mention two, and there's a lot of them. So I call this the ceiling fan challenge. So let's say I'm in the living room and I'm looking around. You know, I've got the Avid with me, or whether again hard copy or not, and everything looks great. Everything looks fine, which is that's a good thing, by the way. When we can't find anything and we have looked around properly, not being able to find anything to disclose is actually on the plus side. That's what I call a happy problem, if it's a problem at all. Usually when there's litigation, maybe a few months after closing, the agent gets like a summons, you know, from the court, and they go, oh yeah, I remember this property. This was a disaster. So when you can't find anything wrong and you have looked around adequately in a room or the whole house, that's good. There's less chance of litigation. But I want to kind of be able to establish that I was actually in the living room. So I don't want to just leave it blank. So I noticed there's a ceiling fan. Oh, good, I'll write that down. Ceiling fan noted. But a ceiling fan is not a defect and it's not a red flag. So it doesn't belong on the form. What it is inventory. So I've just introduced a third and unnecessary category, because once I started mentioning the ceiling fan here, I'm now establishing that I'm going to mention inventory, and I have to mention it in every room of the house. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to tack on an addendum with a list of, 150 items. So don't want to do that. I'll give you an example of what you might do in a minute. The other challenge of many, I'll just mention two again, the spider web challenge, whether it's an actual spider web or not. There's no ceiling fan. Everything looks great. Now, I don't want to say it looks great because it's an adjective and it's for advertising. It's not for disclosure. Some agents think they can get away with the room is in fair condition, but the word fair in court means good. Like if you're going to go on a picnic this weekend, and the weather person on TV the night before says, we're having fair weather tomorrow, that means good weather. Fair means good. We do not compliment a property on a disclosure form. We don't have to criticize it, but we don't ever compliment it. That's again for advertising. So there's no ceiling fan. Everything looks great. I have looked around. So some of us in the business lower the bar far below a material issue, things that are so trivial that they do not affect in any way the value or desirability of the property, and they don't belong on the Avid. Nobody cares about them. They clutter the Avid up, and I end up disclosing there is a scuff mark at the baseboard by the door or something, and it's not worthy of disclosure. Again, it doesn't affect value or desirability, doesn't belong on the document of the Avid. So unless you have an office policy to the contrary, in which case, I've been talking about this for 31 years. I actually have done many seminars in Santa Barbara, but you would usually in person do them at the Association of Realtors upstairs there. I haven't done any there for maybe 3 or 4 years, but anyway, the terminology I like, but go with office policy, because there is some variation in the field of disclosure. I like nothing noted. In my 30 years of this, talking about this, I think more than anybody in California, other than maybe somebody at Carr like Gov. I've never seen anything better than this, and it's almost universally accepted. So there is a living room. I did look around because not all homes have living rooms, but this one does. I just didn't see anything really worthy of disclosure. So a few points on the visual inspection. Wording's important. I love this. If you read down, you matter, don't give up. If you read across, you don't matter, give up. So how we read things makes a difference. Okay, My sponsors, when I appear at a real estate office or an association, I do not personally sell anything. I do not charge anything, absolutely never have. But I am very graciously sponsored by service providers. And of course, you're going to be hearing from Jeff and Liz later on the raffle with guaranteed rate. Melody's here, and if she can unmute herself, which I think you can, and she's with First American. And on the NHD side, you're kind of in a part of the state where it's either called First American NHD, or for more Bay Area Northern, it's JCP.
Take a picture of that, Bill.
Same company, but Melody, go for it. Tell us, you got a minute, so say what you want.
Hi, everyone. Woohoo! Melody Maddox of First American Home Warranty and Natural Hazard Disclosure. And we're talking about disclosure. So this is a great opportunity for say one thing. Order your NHD. Order it when you get your listing. Order before your listing. Why? Because of the fire, the AB 38. You want to make sure this July 1st, there's that new fire hardening defensible space advisory on your car form. So how do you find that? You get your NHD with First American, you go to the summary, third paragraph, and it'll tell you if it's in or out. So you don't have to freak out. If it's in it, right now you can use the home hardening form, but Gov Hutchinson was saying use the new car fire hardening defensible space. If you have any questions on that, give me a call. And if it doesn't close, you don't pay for that NHD. Last but least, a lot of you have seen the Bigfoot behind me for a couple weeks. We're going to have a virtual camp out. Mark your calendars, June 23rd, 10 to 3. You don't have to go to all of them, but we have some great speakers. We have Pat, our geologist, talking about the defensible space, David Hill on Property Tax 101, Lisa Cruz on Lead Generation Facebook, Robert Brand, he's going to hit some more things on staying out of court. We don't want to go in court. And the panel, we have 4 top real estate professionals that are going to talk, and you get a chance to win a $500 Yeti bag. Anyways, I appreciate all you do. And remember, on the home warranty, $25 off for military, active, or retired. Have a wonderful meeting. I'm there for you and your clients to take care of them. You got my cell phone. Call me if you need me, and thanks for all you do. Bye.
Thank you, Melody. You may want to put your phone number in the chat room. And speaking of the chat room, let me just really quickly see if there are any questions. How do you feel about conducting the AVID when the home inspector is? Oh, I'm going to actually cover this. Should you conduct the AVID or fill it out when the home inspector is there? This is actually it's a very good question, but let me just actually skip to that to make sure I'm going to get to it. I actually have, not that anybody wants to hear me this long, I have about 35 hours of completely non-repeating information about disclosure. So let me go back up. I will get to it before I'm done, and I'm sorry for getting you dizzy here. The answer would be, though, real quickly, you would never, ever, ever want to do the AVID at the same time the home inspection is going on. It is a really good question, and to do so is a really bad idea. And that because the home inspector has a different standard of care than we do, and if you're in a room where he's moving a picture off the wall or a painting, and there's some kind of mold thing behind it or whatever, if you were there a day or 2 or 3 before him, you would not have a disclosure, because real estate licensees do not move things. They don't move furniture, they don't move throw rugs, and they do not move pictures and paintings off the wall. So you would go from a position of no liability because you looked around the room, didn't see anything, let's say, and everything looked fine, and you're not going to say it looks fine, you're just going to say, nothing noted or whatever. But now when you're in the presence of the home inspector, or you happen to be passing by when he's seeing something, because he is moving things out of the way, your liability picture changes, and not for the better. So let me talk about this first. This has to do with litigation over, well, especially in a brisk, hot market. I'm in coastal San Diego County, and it's very brisk here. I think it is pretty much statewide. And the scenario here is something hits the market. There's a lot of buyers. Somebody prevails, hopefully your client, your buyer, and they get the deal. And then they call, the scenario is they call you up a month after they moved in and say, hey, we're so glad we had the winning bid, so to speak, and thanks for everything you did. We just didn't notice because we bought this so fast that there's a train nearby that makes a lot of noise, or behind the back wall, there's a very busy street or whatever, a school, like an elementary school, and they have recess and they have bells ringing, and it's just kind of a noise issue. So we do need to disclose these things. How we disclose them is very important, and it's actually easier to disclose them properly than improperly. I love this picture here. Let's say you have a buyer that's looking at this second floor upstairs condo. They've been there 3 times because they're really hot to trot on this. And they've been on the balcony there with you. It's really hard to miss the train tracks here. And maybe the train or the trolley's gone by. There would still be a disclosure, even though it's obvious. So just with that premise, let's use in my example, a golf course and fairway homes right on the green. Let's say it's one of your farm areas, you've done a lot of deals here, know a lot of people that live here, and you have just received a referral to a buyer this time from one of your clients. So that's great. Well, you're going to have to disclose the golf course. Now you might think, well, who can miss it? In real life, nobody could miss it. In the California courtroom, you wouldn't believe how many people would not notice this. So we have to go with assuming the buyer doesn't know anything. So errant golf balls would be an issue, you would have to disclose. And let's say your clients over the years that have bought these fairway homes have said, we go out in the backyard on the weekend and there's 1 or 2 or 3 golf balls, on the patio. So that's going to be like our initial possible disclosure. Watch me clean this up. We got to get rid of 1 or 2 a week. I don't want to get a call from my clients saying, you told me 1 or 2 golf balls a week. We're getting like 8 or 9. I don't want that conversation. So I just changed the disclosure to golf balls occasionally hit the house. I don't need the word occasionally. So I get rid of that. Golf balls hit the house, a lot better than when we started. Now here's the good and the bad. Unfortunately, there's more bad than good. I am probably never, by the way, one more step actually. They may be hitting the nice new Tesla or Mercedes in the driveway, not just the house. So I finished up actually with golf balls hit the property. That's better than when we started. Now the downside is that, let me tell you the good side first. I'm probably never going to get sued over golf balls hitting anything on the property because I told them about it in advance. That's the key to disclosure. Buyers should not be caught off guard. So they're not going to be. I've told them. I've disclosed it to them. But what I haven't disclosed are all kinds of things that can bother somebody about living that close to a golf course. The buyers may say, we just, it's like an Easter egg hunt. We pluck these out of the garden every weekend. But what you didn't tell us is, hey, we just retired and, 5 o'clock in the morning, these lawnmower yard people, landscape people, I should say, start up their engines. It's like the Indy 500. It's really loud. We can't sleep in. We finally can sleep in once in our life. We can't do it now. And then this is a whopper in court. We didn't know it, but they spray pesticide and insecticide and chemical fertilizer, and these clouds of toxic poison flow through the neighborhood. And we got sick, our kids got sick, and we're going to have to move out every time they do that for a few days. And when they move out, by the way, they're not going to the Motel 6. They're going to the Hyatt Regency presidential suite or something. And then just one more, the sprinklers and the water and the wind and all. So for your consideration, when there's something near the home that in your opinion, and it's just opinion, there's no number of feet, there's no number of yards or miles, it's what you think. And that's just the way it goes. I won't go into detail there. If there's something that may bother them, what you want to do is tell them what's there. Do not list out what may bother them about what's there. In this case, it's a golf course adjacent to the property. Now, everything that happens at a golf course when you live that close is like encapsulated into that disclosure. The problem with making a list is you can never make a list long enough. It's kind of like yesterday I did a seminar for an association up around like Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead, Rim of the World, I think it's called. And one of the agents said, hey, I've got buyers coming in from downtown Chicago. They're moving here. They've never lived in a place like this. They have a small dog. We have a lot of trails, you know, through the forest or whatever, and we have a coyote problem. So I'm going to let them know. They probably have never heard of a coyote, or no, I've never seen a coyote living in downtown Chicago. I said, oh, you're going to tell them about the coyotes? Okay, that's great. You're going to tell them about the rattlesnakes, scorpions, black widow spiders, birds of prey, like hawks in the day, owls at night, come down and they can pick up a small animal. Are you going to make a list? Because if you want to, you'll never make the list long enough. There's going to be some critter you're going to leave out. So I have actually something I can maybe share with you in notes later or something, or a perfect disclosure that covers every living creature since the dinosaur age began. But let me give you a couple of other examples right now. So in my 30 years of travel, I don't even know where I was in California, but looks like a La Quinta hotel. And let's say this house is for sale. Well, a disclosure might be the properties next to or adjacent to a hotel. I'm not going to list they have 24-hour check-ins and checkouts. They have, they host a barbecue beer bash on Friday night for guests. Everything that happens at a hotel that will affect you if you live that close is disclosed right here, because I can't make a list. It's too long. And just one more. If we were meeting together and I asked everybody, what do you think's behind that wall? Probably everybody would guess correctly. It's a freeway. This happens to be kind of around Norwalk, Downey area, I-5. So any home near this, you'd want to disclose the freeway, right? Now, a lot of people in our business would disclose the wall and say it mitigates or lessens the noise. But don't forget, the wall is not part of the deal. I'm not making any money on it. I'm not losing any money on it. It's owned by the state or the county or something. It is not part of the transaction. But I do want to let them know there's a freeway there, but I don't want to make a list. So I just basically disclose it's adjacent to a freeway. If I make a list, we have what? Noise. We have vibration if it's really close and something on the mantle is shaking or whatever when trucks go by, gasoline fumes, diesel fumes, blown out tires that are like a runaway missile off of an 18-wheeler. You will never finish the list. So I let them know just what's there. Okay, here, this is what somebody had asked, and I may have another question, make that real quick. Oh no, that's Melody's information. If you want Melody's information, go to the chat room. We'll be right there. Okay, a quick answer to the question. Do not complete or never complete the avid during the home inspection. Here's why. Home inspectors have a very different standard of care than we do. It's much more invasive. I mean, invasive in a good way. You know, they're much more detailed. They're up in the attic and we're not. If there's a crawl space, they're under the house, and you probably have no desire to do that, nor do I. They look under sinks, they move throw rugs, some move furniture, and I don't do any of that. So here's an example. Let's say, now today, you would think I would know what day of the week it is, but okay, today's Tuesday. So I had to check my calendar. Today's Tuesday. And the deal, let's say this afternoon, you have an appointment, you're representing the buyers, deal comes together, have a contract now. Great. And the buyers are really hot to trot. They call a local home inspector, maybe off of a list that you have provided. And by the way, if you're in the habit, especially on the buyer's side, of writing down, I recommend that you obtain the services of a licensed home inspector. Keep in mind that the state of California does not license home inspectors. There are none in the state of California. I think 32 states license them, but we're not one of them. So professional home inspector, qualified home inspector, much better way to go. But anyway, it's Tuesday. Buyers have ordered a home inspection for Saturday, Friday or Saturday. If there is any way humanly possible for you to get out to that property later today or tomorrow or Thursday, whatever, you want the date on your Avid to be an earlier date than the date of the home inspection report. When you do that, there is no question you were not there when the home inspector was there. You want to be there with your buyers present when the home inspection is going on, but you do not want to be doing your Avid. So let's say I get out there tomorrow morning. That's great. I'm in the, let's say in the master bedroom. Well, from this picture here, I don't see anything to disclose. I'm not going to move the bed out of the way. If it was a tile floor and there was a throw rug, I'm not moving the throw rug out of the way. And there is no way I'm going to look behind that painting. But let's say I did, and there was something like this right behind it. Well, that didn't look too good. It's a disclosure issue, certainly. Could be a litigation issue. But I have no disclosure, and in principle, no liability. Because as a real estate licensee, I don't move things out of the way. But if I'm doing my avid, kind of two birds, one stone, I've got to be there anyway, home inspector's going to be there, and I follow the guy around, or I happen to be at the same room, in the same room, when he's moving that painting out of the way and sees what looks like a mold thing, my entire liability profile changes, and not for the better. It can be a real disaster. So to sum this part up, always complete the avid prior to the home inspection, if there's any way possible. On the listing side, that's easy to do. In a hot market, you got to be quicker. In a slow market, you know, you can kind of do it at your leisure, but everything's moving quickly these days. So even on the listing side, you want to get your avid done as early as you can. And then on the buyer side, you want to do that too, as we've mentioned. And by the way, in a slower market, which eventually will happen, I don't know when, maybe a few years away, I don't know, in California, is when you have time, never delay the visual inspection on the listing side, either side, but especially listing. You may have a lot of time, even if they're going to be doing some repairs at the buyer's request, doesn't make any difference, just do it. And have a track record if it comes up in court. You always do the avid at your very soonest opportunity. And then days later, when you're representing the buyers, it's a really good idea to be there. Sit it out, you know, keep to yourself. You've already done your avid. The buyers can do whatever they want, but buyers that actually attend a home inspection are much less prone to litigate. Don't forget, it's buyers bringing all of the litigation in this topic. The biggest litigation issue we have in real estate is this topic. Buyers that attend home inspections rarely sue. It's a really important point. And let me just quickly look. I sort of get alerted when there's a chat thing. Okay, if you complete the avid before the home inspection, then you get the home inspection report. You need to amend the avid if you feel there was something you should have disclosed that was revealed by the home inspector. Okay, that's a really good question. I think I can answer that quickly. Obviously, when you get the termite report, you don't change anything because you don't look for wood-destroying organisms. You have a different standard of care. If they say that there's dry rot in the patio cover, that you have nothing to say because wood-destroying organisms has nothing to do with your standard of care. On the home inspection, if the home inspector finds something that you normally wouldn't have because they're up in the attic and you don't go up in the attic, you would have no comment. If it's something that you really, really should have seen, I don't mean that stain behind the picture, the painting, because you don't move paintings out of the way, but there's something you think, oh, how did I miss that? It would be a good idea to disclose it. Companies vary on this. You can put it in an email or something and just get it to them. And the key or a key to making sure that you can prove that when you send your buyer an email, if that's how you're doing it, that they actually got the email, is you might say, open it up with, hey, we have a nice weekend coming up. You may want to go on a picnic at this park or whatever. And then make your disclosure. I noticed in the home inspection report, it stated that there's, there are cracks in the tile floor of the dining room. They're not settling cracks. They're not surface cracks. They are just cracks. And there's not 3 of them or 4 of them. There are some cracks if there's several. You want to make it really easy to understand and decrease the liability for you by not getting specific. And then the key to this, to make sure that they got it, is ask them a question. Say, are you going to be meeting with Jeff on the lender side? Is it this Thursday or this Friday? They will answer that. And when they answer it, make a copy. It shows they got the email, they read through your disclosure to get to the question about Jeff, and they answer that question. So that's a way to do it. Good question. I probably won't look at the chat thing again because I've only got about 10 minutes. This is really easy, really brief, and it's overly simplistic, so it won't take but a couple of minutes. The last page of the TDS here, sections 3 and 4, or 4, depending on which side of the deal you're on. Let me just give you some suggestions. I do get a lot of questions about it. So my suggestion, go with office policy, is you check off that top box, see attached AVID form. That tells the buyers, especially buyers that might go into court saying, I've never done a deal before, never bought real estate, or it's been 20 years since I didn't even know what I was doing here. You're telling them by checking off that box that your disclosures will not be, especially on the buyer's side, will not be in the TDS. They're on a different form, and that form, which is relatively new in terms of just a few years old, several years old, is going to be on a form called the AVID. It is not going to be here. And that means that you do not want to write anything in the 4 lines. I can tell you, having been at this for a while, being court many times, that just about anything you write there can be used against you in court. It's just not a good, if you leave it blank, there's no issue. You've checked off a box saying my comments are going to be somewhere else. It's called the AVID. Of course, you got the name, broker's name and date and all that stuff. So that's about it. That just be careful for sections 3 and 4. Okay, let me talk about investor clients. And trying to talk fast here. You may have, that may be your whole book of business. You may have several clients that flip properties. This could be also applied to an absentee seller that got a home in Goleta, in Santa Barbara, in Paso Robles, in Oxnard, whatever, and they live in Denver. They don't even live here in Southern California, and they're or in California. They're just disposing of their properties. But I'll go with investor clients. The principle is the same. They've never lived there. Investor clients often never reside in the home, especially if they're doing a lot of them. So that means that the block of disclosure that a buyer would get from a seller who's lived there for 10 or 20 years isn't there, because the seller, the investor client, never resided in the home for more than a few days or something. The reality, though, is investor clients are just regular sellers. It's not like great-grandfather finally passed away and I'm a trustee and I'm exempt from the TDS, and there's no exemption at all. They are a regular seller. And that block of disclosure, again, and information that would come from a seller that's lived in the property is missing. That means the chance of litigation goes up, because often it's only the sellers who know something that may be of interest to the buyers that the buyers may want to know about ahead of time. So a lot of these end up in court. And you got, let's call this person Mr. Investor Client, is on the stand, and the judge is saying, hey, look, the buyers have moved into this place and they've got flooring problems. They got roof issues. It looks like there's a mold thing. You didn't tell them anything. Why didn't you tell them any of this? The next photo was a stock photo, but it's very accurate. This investor client said, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I never lived there. And since it's going to be in a California courtroom, having been in many, do not be surprised if the judge says, I don't care if you live there or not. These people just plunked down, I don't know, 900 grand for this place or whatever. They have a right to know what the condition is from the person who sold it to them or the seller. And it doesn't go well for the seller. And if that's your client, their attorney is worried now, my client's in trouble, and they want to point the finger at somebody else. It's often to you because you have the E&O coverage. So here's a way to lessen that potential liability. You know, in California, statewide, we kind of have a custom of recommending to our buyers that they have the home professionally inspected. It's a good thing. It's already in the fine print of the RPA and Abbott and so forth. When you actually, well, we used to years ago write it out, penmanship, but it could be an email, it could be anything. When you personally say you may want to get, I would suggest that you get the home professionally inspected. That's a good thing, even though it's already out there. But we normally they do it different in the Bay Area, a little different anyway, but normally we are not in the practice of recommending to our sellers that they have a home inspection, but it's a really good thing to recommend when you're on the listing side and your seller, like an investor client, doesn't know anything about the property really. They're just painting it and fixing it up. And so now where you put that, or where the seller puts it, if you look at this as part of the TDS, in my very low-tech graphics, you see the arrow, additional inspection reports or disclosures. So they just write in there something like CXYZ or Acme Home Inspection Company report number or whatever as an additional disclosure. And now the buyers, who are probably going to get their own home inspection from another company, have more information from the seller, the investor, than they would from a regular seller who lived there for 15 years, because home inspections are just more detailed. So it's a really good way to be on record when you're challenged, if you are in court. Why didn't you tell you knew your client never lived in the property? They provided no disclosure to the buyers. Why didn't you do something about this? And this is a really good something to do about it and to be on record for it. Okay, let me maybe close with this. I might be able to squeeze something else in. Building permits, there is some variation in California. And, over the 3 decades, I just go everywhere, or have gone everywhere. A lot of nice places and places you wouldn't want to go, but all over. And there are some differences. Always go with company policy. But let's say you are involved in a transaction where or can assume, something's been tacked onto this house. And these days, with the whole ADU thing, accessory dwelling units, it's more of an issue. I mean, these things are nicer, cheaper, easier to put in, and so forth, and they're all over the place. And there's usually, if not always, permit issues. Or it doesn't have to be a tiny house. It can be like a man cave or whatever. So if you look at the Avid, you don't look at it now, but when we're done, you have one sitting around, just look at the first page of the Avid in the fine print. So you may need a magnifying glass. California law does not require the agent to inspect the following. 4 things are mentioned. I mentioned just one, and this is verbatim. Public records or permits. It says it right there. It says also on the first page of the Avid, elsewhere, fine print, by statute, agent is not obligated to pull permits or inspect public records. So twice we're told we're not supposed to have anything to do with this. Companies do vary, but I think advice you may want to consider is to have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with building permit, documentation, research, verification, even to the point when your buyers haven't closed, but they've moved to Santa Barbara, they're staying at a hotel and waiting for it to close, and they just need a lift to City Hall to do on their own some building permit information research. It's called Uber, taxi, limo, just, in my opinion, have nothing to do with it, not a little bit. And I like this expression, buyers are advised to check with the local municipality regarding building permit information. Now, I like the expression local municipality because there are some places, and I don't know about Santa Barbara as an example, but a lot of larger cities, there was like a recent lawsuit in Pasadena. The home was kind of by the Rose Bowl complex, where the property had a Pasadena, California mailing address, but it wasn't technically in the city of Pasadena. It was a little bit outside of it. The buyer's agent, who was from hundreds of miles away, was a relative buying the property, said, check with the city of Pasadena, City Hall, whatever, for building permit information. But that was bad guidance because it wasn't in the city. It was a little bit outside of it, although it still had a Pasadena mailing address. And so the advice should have been to go to the county of Los Angeles. And the agent got in a heap of trouble in court with the judge scolding the agent. Why did you tell him to go to the wrong place? So when you write down local municipality, it's broader, it's putting the burden on the client where it belongs. Find out what agency controls this. And if you want building permit information, I'm not going to be providing it because it's just not part of my job, but you're saying it in a better way. Let me just look real quickly here at something that I can do real fast. I've got so much info here. Sorry for, okay, let me just see if there's any, oh, I didn't mean to stop sharing. Well, it was about time to stop sharing. So I'm going to end it here because I think I'm at my time.